What is going on, guys? This is Shy from Team Homebrews with another budget deck list. This is a deck list that I've been wanting to do for a while. When I mean a while, I mean like before Final Fantasy TCG was a thing in North America. Um, when I was doing research on this game before it came out, I remember getting a glimpse of this card, this exact card, in Japanese when they did their first wave in Japan. And I knew that I was like, all right, if there's like this card, there has to be more. There has to be Shinra cards coming out very, very soon. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna make a Shinra deck as soon as these cards come out. They came out in Opus 8. I was excited. We got Reno, Rude, and Rufus. And Rufus was the one I was really looking forward to. So with Opus 11 out, we kind of got a little bit of an update for um, the Turks. And I figure I'll show you guys this deck build that I created. This deck build is it's pretty budgeted. I mean, it should be. Last time I checked, Rufus wasn't as much. I think he was about $4 a card. But starting off, I run 3 copies of Rufus. Rufus is an EX burst that costs 4, and what he does is when he hits the field, you get to search for one job member Turks and add it to your hand. The plus side to this is that this goes for backups as well as forwards. And I that's very valuable in this deck, the fact that you can look for backups and forwards. When Rufus or a job member Turks you control is sent to the break zone, that includes him. When they are sent to the break zone, you choose one active forward that your opponent controls and you deal it 5k. This deck build is a lot about damage. That's what I was going for when I was creating this Shinra Corpse deck. It's all about doing damage to your opponent's cards. And making sure that they can't keep up with your tempo. And at the same time, whenever they want to put something down, you annihilate it. So I run 3 copies of Rufus. Next, I run 3 copies of the new Forward Rude. I think the new Forward Rude is great. I'm not so much of a big fan of the First Strike because that's what he has. If you control a card named Rufus, he gets plus 3k. So he's a 10k beater, and he's great. That's basically what Rude is supposed to be. If you guys are familiar with Final Fantasy VII, if you control another member, if you control a member of the Turks other than Rude, he gets First Strike. The First Strike part is part of the card that I don't really care about. I just knew that compared to the backup Rude, this Rude is just so much better. I wasn't a fan of the backup Rude. When we got the backup Rude, I was kind of like, not a really big fan of this card, just because I didn't like the card. I just really didn't. Next, we got 3 copies of the Opus. Which one is this? Opus 4 Cloud. I think that this Cloud is very playable. He's a 3-drop. He has an EX burst, and every time he hits the field, you get to choose an opponent's card forward on if you control another category of Final Fantasy VII other than Cloud, and you get to deal it 7,000 damage. So the fact that he gets to hit the field and gets to do 7k damage to something is amazing. Now, if you get to pitch off another Cloud, and you dull 1 fire and 1 any other element, and dull him, you choose 1 forward opponent controls, and you deal it 8,000 damage and deal 4,000 damage to all other forwards that your opponent controls. So that's you doing even more damage to your opponent. This really disrupts things on your opponent's board, especially if you want to keep Rufus alive. Because Rufus is very valuable to the deck, but the plus side with Rufus is that if he dies, you're dealing more damage to something. So this really helps with keeping the damage on him. Next, I run 3 copies of this this common cloud. The common cloud was really supposed to be here for the S ability, but he's actually good if you get him first. The fact that if you control another Final Fantasy VII character and he has I'm trying to get it out the glare. And he gets brave. If you have another Final Fantasy VII character, that's great. If you dull him, you get to choose one attacking forward, and it gains 2k power. So he can put power to something else attacking. It can be Rufus, it can be Rude, it can be whatever. You can dull him, and he just does that. I think that this cloud is very interesting because the fact that he has, I feel like this cloud has a lot of utility. And I'm trying to keep the glare out for you guys. The fact that he has a lot of utility, and he's a common, and he's 3, and he's a 7k is fantastic. I feel like if you use him correctly, he can be used better than what you think he can. Next, I run 3 copies of the 5-drop Zack. This is from Opus 3. This is the legendary. I prefer this Zack over the newer Zack and the Zack that came out in Opus 10. I feel like those Zacks were catered to just a certain kind of playstyle, and because my deck is going for damage and pumping up powers and power boosting, this Zack just works better for the deck build. So when this Zack hits the field, all forwards that you control get plus 2k power until the end of turn. And what makes him interesting is that if he dies, you get to search for a cloud. And I know there's a second ability. You get to search for a cloud that costs 4 or less, and add it to your hand, or play it to the field dulled. So that's a plus. So if you need that extra, beater that's gonna get down to the field, you can do that. If you want to put it to your hand and use it to pitch it off later, you can also do that. But the fact that he allows you to search if he dies is great. The fact that he hits the field and he pumps things for an attack is also great. And I feel like this is great for the build of the Shinra Corp deck. Next, I have 2 copies of Angeal. Angeal is here to search out for the Zack if we should ever need it. Now, originally when I was building the deck, Angeal was already in the deck, but when I saw that there was a new Elena that came out for the Turks, I was like, oh man, I want to play Elena. Originally, I was going to put her in the Angeal spot. The problem that I have with Elena is that, unlike Angeal, Elena can't attack if she's by herself. That's the only problem that I have with her. She's a 2-drop 7k, which is awesome, with haste. That's great. She has all these things, which is amazing. The problem is that she can't attack if she's alone. And sometimes you're going to find yourself in those situations. You're going to be by yourself and you need to attack. She can't do that. So I opted for Angeal instead to stay within the theme of Final Fantasy VII and Turks. I bumped the camera. Give me a second. There we go. So that's Angeal. Next is the new Reno. I'm only playing one of the Renos. And the reason for this is because I opted for 3 copies of the backup Reno instead. Now, I like the new Reno. I think the new Reno is great. I think he's playable. But because I'm going for a deck build that doesn't really cater to like a haste, I'm going to just straight attack you on a frontal assault. It's more of a, I want to remove things from your board. I decided to go for this Reno instead. So this Reno, what he does is he gets 3k power if Rufus is on the field. And if you have another job other than him, he gets haste, which is great. But this Reno is, if you break Reno and put him into the break zone, you get to deal an active forward 3,000 damage. Now, what I do with this is I kind of combo it with the Rufus, because if a job member of the Turks dies, he gets to deal 5k. So that means you break your Reno, deal 3k to an active forward, and then when he dies, the Rufus triggers and deals 5k to an active forward. So that's 8k to an active forward, and I like that. I like that you're always removing things. Now, the thing that I usually do, and how I play it is I usually, if a lot of times what happens is I already have a Reno in my hand, I'll put down Rufus and I'll search for another Reno. So if I ever want to play my Reno's combo and blow him up, I can just drop another one. You know, that's usually how I play it. Next is I have one of the backup Rude. This is only if I run out of the forward Rude. Then I run the back. I play the backup, just so I can have a member of the Turk. Now, this Rude is you choose one. You dull him. You choose one card named Rufus or job member of the Turks that you control, and it gains 1k power at the end of turn. That was one of the things I didn't like about this Rude is the fact that you have to dull him to do that. A lot of times you don't want to dull your ability to power up something. Like a lot of times I don't like to do that. That's just my playstyle. But his second ability, which is Ground Spark, you pitch off another copy of Rude. You pay 3 lightning and 4 any other colors. Then you dull him and you deal 8,000 damage to all active forwards that you're. Oh wait, 8,000 damage to all active forwards. It just says all active forwards. I thought it was all your opponent's active forwards. But all active forwards, you can only use this ability if you control a card named Reno. I find that like the stipulation with his second ability was really bothering me. So I opted for the forward Rude instead. But the whole dulling and doing the 1,000, that's if you just want to get that last bit of damage in. You know, you put it on your Zac, or if you want to put it on your Angel, make him an 8k, you can do that. But oh wait, no, it only works on your Rufus or your Turk member. I never really used that ability. I just like to have another member of the Turks on the field. Next is I got 2 copies of Warrior. The new Warrior, originally what I had here was Lulu, the backup red Lulu. I took her out because I noticed that one of the things that was bugging me was breaking one of my own backups that I didn't want to break to deal 8k to something, and then I noticed that it would take me some time to catch back up. So I opted for this instead. I figure if I'm going to get more power, why not have another card that gives me more power? So you dull Warrior, you dull Warrior, put him into the break zone, choose one forward, and it gains 1,000 power until the end of turn. Now if you use 1 fire and dull 1 any element plus him, put him into the break zone, you choose 1 forward and you deal like 5,000 damage. So that just works with the whole Reno and the Rufus combo if you come across something that's too big. Next is 2 copies of Black Mage, the backup. This is just extra damage. You break Black Mage, put him into the break zone, deal 4,000 damage to something. I only got 2 of those. Then you do 2 copies of Mystic Knight. This is just in case something gets damaged, like if your Rufus dies and you got Mystic Knight on the field, you can just break Mystic Knight to break a forward. This is just in case Rufus doesn't survive the hit to another forward and the forward survives, then you can always get rid of it anyway. Think of it as like a contingency plan. Next is 2 copies of Selkie. There's a lot of 2-ubs in this. 2 copies of Selkie. This new Selkie is pretty interesting, and I notice it helps me out quite a bit. So when Selkie enters the field, you get to turn over a card at a time at the top of your deck until you get a fire or a water card is revealed and added to your hand. Then shuffle the other cards at the bottom of your deck. So she comes in handy, especially if you're looking for a cloud or if you're looking for a summon, or if you're looking for something that can change the tide of the battle for you, she really helps. The only thing that I noticed that I'm coming to problems with is the fact that when she hits the field, I don't have a way to break her off of the field in this build, so I have no way of doing that. Next is 2 copies of Sage. When Sage enters the field, you get to search for 1 fire summon and add it to your hand. One thing about Sage is that I never want to play him from my hand. I always want to flip him for an EX burst. I never want to drop this guy, but I always get him in my hand like all the time. Next is 2 copies of Sage. Sage is here to pick up the pace for characters that don't have haste. He's there to give someone haste. That's why he's there. That's basically what he does, and he's good at it. So sometimes if you want to close out the end of the game, you got four backups left, you can put down your Sage, give something haste from your hand, swing for extra damage or swing for the win. Last is 1 copy of Red Mage, the haste Red Mage. This is just to pick up the backslash, I would say pick up the pace of the deck for me not having the Reno or any other haste, because I feel like when you run lightning you should have haste, but this deck is more about damage than haste. Next we're going on to summons. We got 2 copies of the 4-drop Ifrit. This is the one where you choose 1/4, you deal it 7,000 damage, but if you flip for an EX burst, you do 8,000 damage instead. Running 2 of these. Next is 3 copies of Brynhildr. Choose 1/4, you deal it 7,000 damage. There's a lot of summons in this deck because this deck is all about damage and killing stuff. Next is 2 copies of the Ifrit, the one that does 6,000 damage. And we have 2 copies of 7-drop Odin. He breaks a forward. And then 1 copy of Andromelech. I'm thinking about taking this one out for something else. I'm not sure what it would be. If I would take out this one, it might be to add the second Reno, maybe. I don't know. I have to, really think about that. But I feel weird about adding another Reno when I already have 3. Well, 4, really. So I feel weird about running 5 of them. So next we got monsters. Okay. We're running 1 Ruby Dragon. This is just as a contingency plan if you kind of run out of options and you need something that can just deal damage and get something big out of your way. This would be it. Next is 2 copies of Dragon. You pay 1 lightning, put Dragon into the break zone, and choose 1 monster 4 or less and break it. Or you can pay 2, which is 1 lightning, 1 element of any color, and put the dragon into the break zone and choose 1 forward, cost 4 or less, and break it. That's just to get something pesky out of your way. And last but not least is 2 copies of Lava Spider. Lava Spider just basically gives all your forwards 3,000 power when they're attacking. That doesn't mean the same thing for blocking, it's just attacking. So with this deck build, I've been meaning to build this deck build for quite a while. That glare is terrible. I've been meaning to build this deck build for quite a while, and it's been consistent, which is surprising to me because a lot of these cards are really old, but a lot of these cards are pretty good. They're pretty decent cards. Not sure if you would win a tournament or anything like that, but you would definitely have a lot of fun with the deck for sure. I'm still waiting on the other Turk members because I know we haven't gotten Sang yet, but one of the things that I noticed that Turks doesn't have is a card that kind of like grabs things from the break zone. Turks don't have that yet, and I'm wondering if they're gonna get that because I feel like the deck could benefit for something like that. But one of the things I don't want is the Turks to just be locked in lightning. That's my biggest concern. I feel like the Turks should be purple is fine. I think lightning is fine, but I feel like they can thrive more in another color. But I don't. Maybe black, maybe. But that would probably be weird, maybe. But I think maybe Rufus, like another Rufus, or the president of Shinra can possibly be a card. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this deck list, and I'm sorry for the glare. I apologize, but uh, this is the only place I can shoot this. So I will see you guys next time. Bye.